All right, so now that we've got our basic understanding of radian measure behind us, we can start talking about trigonometry and what it actually is. Just like with logarithms, I think most people's hesitation or trouble with trig functions is trying to find some deeper meaning in the notation, and there's not any deeper meaning to be had, okay? Again, I didn't come up with this notation. This is just the notation as it is. Here you can see a picture of a unit circle. A unit circle is just a circle that has a radius of 1, okay? And it turns out that there's a lot of times where we want to know where we are around the edge of this circle. Here's a point on the edge of my circle. Here's a point. Here's a point. Here's a point. Here's a point. We want to know where we are, and it's easier to describe that using an angle measure instead of your regular rectangular x and y coordinate. Now, what trig functions do is they help us go from rectangular coordinates to angle coordinates. And so if you know a radius and you know the angle that's been made, then you can find the x and the y coordinates using our trig functions. Okay? And the definition really, like if I wanted to know this point, if I know what this angle is, sorry, not x. If I want to know what this angle is, this would be theta. Okay, if I want to know this, if I know this angle and I want to know the x and y coordinates at this point, it's actually really simple. The definition of the x coordinate of this point is just the cosine of this angle. So cosine of theta is the same thing as x. And the y coordinate of this point is just going to be sine of that same angle. So sine of theta just represents the y coordinate on the unit circle for the angle that created this line where this point's at the end of. So cosine and sine, these are the definitions right here. So that we're using t here. Typically when you're talking about a unit circle, we use t instead of theta, but most of the time I'm going to be talking about theta because that works in general across the board. And so again, you can see that if we know the angle t, then sine of t is just the y coordinate of the point that's on the outside of the circle. Cosine of t is the x coordinate of that same point. Tangent of t is the ratio of the y coordinate divided by the x coordinate. Cosecant is 1 over the y coordinate, secant is 1 over the x coordinate, and cotangent is 1 over the x coordinate over the y coordinate. Now, all of these functions came out of necessity. When we think about rotational motion or vertical motion problems, and we have something shot at an angle, we'd sometimes want to know what that y coordinate is. We also would want to know what the x coordinate is. And it seemed like we were doing some problems that constantly required the ratio of the y over the x coordinates, and so that's why the tangent function was created. And then sometimes we just wanted to know what was the reciprocal of the y coordinate, because that was important, and so that's where cosecant, secant came from, same idea, and cotangent are just, these are all reciprocals of these functions, okay? And so these are the definitions, and these are things that you just have to memorize. You just have to memorize these definitions. So what does this mean for us, and where do we get values now for these trig functions? That's what we're going to talk about in this next